Hello and welcome to this week's Used Car Heaven. Now, every week on the programme we offer you advice on buying a used car. This week in part 1 we put 3 super minis to the test, and in part 2, what sort of car should the teenager who's just passed their driving test and desperate to get their first vehicle buy? We'll tell you on this week's Used Car Heaven. So our 3 super minis are the stylish Citroen Saxo, the quirky Ford Ka, or should that be car, and the sexy Fiat Cinquecento. They're all small, they're all nippy, easy to park and easy to drive, and offer pretty good value for money. They're relatively cheap to buy right now. But which is the best car of the 3? Tim, what do you make of the Fiat Cinquecento?
A popular little car, actually. Very popular for the ladies indeed, very much of a ladies' car. Small, handy, easy to park, and cheap to maintain.
Build quality on the Cinquecentos, any problems?
No problem. Contrary to the belief that Fiats are made actually in Italy, is a different kettle of fish with these. These are actually built in Poland, so there's no build quality problems with them at all, no.
Specification, fairly tight, nothing much.
Very bland really, as you find on most of the small cars. They're not heavy on specification. You've got this particular model, which is the 1 litre SX 3-door. It has, this was got a factory fitted sunroof, it's got remote central lock-in, and that's it really, 5-speed and a radio cassette, not a lot more for your money.
Any major problems to look out for?
No, nothing with the Fiat, or personally as a dealership we've not encountered any problems with them at all, no. Because the typical driver of these vehicles obviously do a low mileage, and they're like secondary vehicles, they're like point-to-point cars, so they've not exactly had a hard life, you know, when you find one.
What sort of price was the car new, and what's it worth today, a couple of years later?
That new when it was registered, I mean this particular one is a 1998 on an R, so it's approximately about 18 months old. That was just about £6,600 new. We have this particular model up for about £4,500 and it's just covered 7,000 miles. So about a £2,000 depreciation in 18 months, which actually isn't too bad on that sector of car.
How many models in the range?
There's actually only 3 models in the range. You've got the SX, the Sporting and the S, and that's it.
Immediately you get into the Cinquecento, you immediately notice how different it is in terms of build quality from the other 2. Let's face it, it ain't particularly great. Now, Fiat have long been renowned for producing very good small cars. Remember the Fiat 126s? Really good little nippy cars that used to run and run and run until they started to rust, and then things used to go wrong. The Cinquecento is very similar to the 126. It's not got great styling, it's very boxy. It looks very cheap and plasticky inside with lots of metal on the doors still that haven't even been bothered to be covered up. But it doesn't drive too bad. Remember, this is only a 900cc engine. It only produces 41 brake horsepower. The steering ain't up to much, the brakes ain't up to much, but for the money, it's not bad. The great thing about the Cinquecento is that they're cheap cars both to buy and to run. Even new, they weren't exactly expensive, and on the second-hand market, well, if you look for an early 1993 K-plate, 900 or 900S, expect to pay around £2,000. They're also only Insurance Group 2, which is fantastic, particularly if you're young and this is one of your first cars. If you feel the Cinquecento isn't quite in your league, well, try the Seicento from Fiat. That was introduced to replace the Cinquecento in 1998. It's got generally a better build quality. It's more curvier, a bit more stylish as well, and a bit sporting as well. Look out for the 3 models, the S, the SX, and the 1100 Sporting. There are only 3 models in the Cinquecento range. There's this basic model, there's the SX and the 1.1 Sporting, which gets that slightly bigger 1.1 litre engine, about 10 more brake horsepower. Equipment is fairly basic. You get electric windows in this, you get a radio, you get a heater, which is ideal on a day like this when it's about 90 degrees outside. Now, Fiat have always been renowned for producing really good quality small cars. Remember the Fiat 126. Fun. Not exactly a joy to drive, but great value for money. The car seems a very popular model, and there are, what, 3 versions of it produced by Ford?
That's right, yeah. Originally when they launched the vehicle it was just called the Ford Car, which was then classed as the 1. Then they revised that with the 2, and then they've got the Car 3, which has a little bit more in specification. This particular model has air conditioning and a CD player and power steering and the alloy wheels. So yeah, they're a good little number, these.
What would this sell for now then?
This particular model would sell for in the region of about £7,400. It's covered 4,000 miles and it's under 12 months old, so it's approximate saving of around about maybe £2,600 for the sake of 4,000 miles on it, which isn't bad.
What sort of person buys a car? Who's attracted to them?
It's hard. I wouldn't say there's your typical stereotype for driving them. It appeals across the broad range. You get older people driving them because they're easy, the small, the 3-door power steering. It's a very chic looking thing, so it's appealing to the younger ladies really, and that's it.
Any major problems you've encountered with these?
No, personally as a dealership again, we've not encountered any trouble with these. Good build quality on them, a very, very good all-rounder. Good car.
Now, the car, or Ka, was Ford's first foray into new edge design, and it's one of those things that, well, you either love or you hate. My cameraman today absolutely hates it. He doesn't like all the cheap plastic interior. He doesn't like the general style. He doesn't like the new edge design styling to start with. I actually quite like the car. It's different. I think that's what cars are all about these days. You're looking for something that is that bit different. Variety is the spice of life. It's got a 1.3 engine. Immediately it feels a bit nippier, a bit more responsive than the Saxo's 1-litre engine. The first car was introduced in October 1996 with a 60 brake horsepower 1.3 Endura engine. It comes with a 5-speed gearbox, independent front suspension, and prices start on the used market around £5,000, so it's holding its value reasonably well. Car 2 gets power assisted steering, tinted glass, airbag, immobiliser, electric windows and central locking. When new, the Car 2 was £900 more expensive than the standard model. Now, if you want a car with all the bits, then go for the Car 3, which gets as well air conditioning, alloy wheels and a smart stereo, although you will pay for it on the used market. The car immediately feels a lot better to drive than the Saxo. The handling is sharper, although you don't get quite as good a ride. Now, me and the cameraman are agreed on one thing at least today, that the car, or Ka, doesn't feel as solid and as well built as the Saxo. These sort of cars are designed as, well, city cars for want of a better term. They're small, they're easy to park, great to nip in and out of small spaces, take to the supermarket, whatever. And without being sexist, the car is very popular amongst lady drivers. And you can see why. It's got a stylish interior, although it looks cheap and very plasticky. Everything's neat to hand. There's 1 or 2 gripes. For instance, there's no boot release, so you have to use the key every time you want to go and open the boot. But I like the way that the radio's been styled into the dash. This Car 3 has got things like air conditioning, a CD player, a quality stereo system. It's only got, though, in the rear 2 seat belts, so it's only designed at most to take 4 people, something you should be aware of. When were the Saxo first introduced?
The Saxos were actually introduced in the summer of 1996, which replaced the Citroen AX. Popular car, very, very popular indeed. This particular model is a 1997 on the R, 1-litre Mischief, which is a special edition, which benefits from a slightly jazzier interior, the metallic paint and a CD player with this one.
Any worries about French build quality?
No. Whatever you hear about that, you can certainly quash it. The Saxos have got excellent build quality. They're very, very sturdy. People always used to knock the previous cars for like flimsiness on the metalwork and that. Totally untrue with these. The build quality is lovely with them. We have never encountered any problems with them.
And a good selection of models and engines in the range?
Yeah, there is. I mean, they go from the smallest one to the 1-litre, then they go up to the 1.6, which they do the VTR and the VTS range, which are exceptionally popular, as we've encountered here. We had a VTR 3-door a few months ago, and we had 2 customers virtually squabbling over it on the front, which you may laugh about now, but it wasn't funny at the time. They are a very, very popular car indeed.
The Saxo is a big favourite with private buyers, presumably.
Yes, it is. It's part of the small car sector, obviously. Very, very much in competition with these particular cars, but it's quite a modern-looking car. It's a late introduction into the range since 1996. So, it is. It's a popular car.
Are there rivals for these three in the super mini sector?
You've got a few extras, yeah. You've got the Daihatsu Charade, which is the small three-door again. You've got the Suzuki Alto, which is in comparison with this, and you've also got something like the Toyota Starlet. So yeah, an extra three really across the range with these.
I really like this Citroen Saxo. It's a very stylish car. It's quiet, it's refined, and it's so much better than the previous AX model. And of course, it's very nippy, it's easy to park. And these 1-litre engines that you'll find in something like this are incredibly economical. Astonishing miles to the gallon you will get from this. It's also very popular amongst 17-year-olds, mainly because of the free insurance offer that Citroen did. So a lot of people took that up to get advantage of that free insurance offer. So it's maybe something to beware of, that if it's been owned by a youngster, it might have had perhaps a hard year or two whilst they've been enjoying that free insurance. Certain Citroens decided to use this rather interesting and quirky immobiliser keypad arrangement. Every time you wanted to start the car, you had to tap in your favourite code to get this car to start. It's rather annoying and just a bit of a pain, to be honest. Thankfully, these have now gone from most of the Citroen range. The Saxo offers pretty good space all round for such a small car, including the rear. The front seats are comfortable but not very adjustable. Expect to pay well as little as £4,000 for an early Saxo. There are also special edition models to look out for, like the Spree, the Scandal and Desire, if you can really be seen in a car named Desire. What the Saxo gets is really good build quality. You may think that French cars are not up to much, but you'd be wrong. This Saxo really is well put together. There are a great choice of engines in the range. You can have a 1-litre, a 1.1, 1.4, there's 1.6 and diesel versions too. Now, of course, the 1.6 is the really cooking VTR and VTS models, which are astonishingly quick and make tremendous value on the used market. So watch out for those. They've got everything as standard. They're an out-and-out sports car. So it's decision time on Used Car Heaven. Which of these 3 super minis that we've tested would we take home tonight given the chance? The first casualty, I'm afraid, is the dear little Fiat Cinquecento. It's small, it's cute, it's sexy, it's Italian, come Polish. It offers quite a bit of room inside for such a small car. It only has a tiny 900cc engine, so you ain't going to be making any fast progress. So first casualty, I'm afraid, is the Fiat Cinquecento, which brings us on to the Ford car. Now, I really like the car. It's Ford's New Edge design. Of course, it was the first to adopt the New Edge design policy. The interior, again, I like, apart from just the hordes of plastic everywhere. It's very well specified, this car. 3 air conditioning, CD player, to name just a few bits and bobs, but that's reflected in the price. It's the most expensive of the 3, £7,500 for this S-plated example. Which brings us on to the Citroen Saxo, which for £4,400 is excellent value for money for this R-plated model. It maybe doesn't drive quite as well as the car, but we think it's better built, and at the end of the day, this, we think, is the car we're going to take home tonight, the Citroen Saxo. Join us for more on Used Car Heaven in Part 2, coming up soon. Hello and welcome back to Part 2 of Used Car Heaven. Now, as a 17 or 18-year-old, as a teenager, you've just passed your driving test. You're delighted and you're looking forward to buying your first car, your pride and joy. So, what sort of car do you go for? Well, of course, it's going to be small and relatively small-engined. Something perhaps like this, a Peugeot 106 1-litre. A newer model with less miles on the clock than something like this, an older Nova 1.4 SR that's probably going to cost you a bit more. What are the perils and pitfalls of buying these cars? And of course, what are the benefits? The Vauxhall Nova was first introduced in 1983 and ran for 10 years to 93, of course, to be replaced by the more modern and attractive Corsa. It's a practical, affordable super mini hatchback. It has simple mechanical components which make for easy DIY maintenance and, of course, low running costs. The handling from the front-wheel drive car is fine, but the ride, the noise levels and overall comfort may be not up to modern car standards. Watch for high mileage vehicles, clocked examples and abused hot models like the GTI, and also damaged vehicles.
Well, it's low insurance, it's a fairly fast car, nippy car. I do a lot of motorway miles, it's got a nice bit of oomph and can go on the motorway. It's relatively cheap, I get sort of 300 miles for £20 of fuel. And the parts seem to be reasonably cheap when things go wrong with it. Well, I looked at the Citroen AX GT, which again is another nippy car, but I found that the build quality wasn't great on them. I also looked at a Fiesta XR2, but found that the majority of them had been hammered and had lots of blue smoke and stuff coming out the back.
Now, unfortunately, I'm no expert when it comes to looking under here, looking under the bonnet, getting your hands dirty, but I know someone who is. Norman Smith. He's an expert on these sort of cars. So Norman, this is a 1.4 litre engine. Any major problems that you come across regularly on these cars?
No, the Vauxhall Nova, it is one of the best of the small cars, I think. The engines, gearboxes, car in general will do 100,000 miles. It's a simple car, anybody who wants to do it themselves, quite easy to work on yourself. Parts are readily available and parts are reasonably priced. If when you see the car it looks tidy, all the tyres are the same make, the inside of the car looks clean and tidy, things that make it look like the owner or the chap you're buying off has looked after the car and not just use it as a get you home, get you to work, one thing another. If it's been looked after, then you have the chance you'll get a good car and you'll get good service out of it. They are a good car. One of the best of the small cars, I think. A full service, including the service items and the VAT, we'd be charging about £135, £140, and that would be a comprehensive service, going right the way through the car. Other than that, things like brakes, clutches, replacement parts, they are fairly reasonable priced and they're very easy to get hold of.
So the benefits of buying an older car like this, which has done more mileage to the Peugeot we're going to come on to in a minute, are there any drawbacks to a higher mileage car in your opinion?
No. If a car's been well used, it will stand the mileage. Yeah, you can buy a car 8, 9, 10 years old with next to no miles on it, and that car will give you no mileage at all. You're far better off having a car that's been used regular and well looked after, irrespective of the mileage. They will handle mileage. The Nova will handle mileage.
The only problems I've had is front tyre wear, because it's a front wheel drive car, and I've had a couple of problems with the electrics, but that's about it. Been very pleased with it. I paid £4,000 for it in April 1997, and I'm looking at just over 2.5 now, I think, for it.
What's standard on the 1.4 SR?
You get the electric windows, central locking, sports Recaro seats, 5-speed gearbox, and I've got the white dials model, so you get white dials with it.
And how many miles has this example done?
This one's just gone over to 80,000 miles.
For somebody looking for that first car after they've passed the test, would you recommend this as their first car?
Definitely, this is the second one that I've had, and I've been very pleased with both of them. My last car had done over 100,000 miles and it still ran perfectly smoothly.
The Peugeot 106, in our view, is one of the best super minis around. It's economical, it's refined with a good ride and reasonable handling. It was first introduced in October 1991, so you should find the first examples on a J plate. Again, a good range of engines to choose from 1 litre through to 1.6. A 1 litre like this only produces 45 brake horsepower, so it may struggle a bit when it's fully loaded, but it's fairly nippy all the same. There was one major revision in 1996 with a new interior and revisions to the exterior, plus more standard specification. There are also lots of special edition 106 models around, with extra bits and bobs on. Prices, well, they range from probably early 2000 marks to around 6,000 for the early models, and then the later revised models start about the 4,000 mark, running up to £8,500.
Peugeot because it had the nicest interior and it ran very smoothly and it's a joy to drive. I had looked around at quite a few other cars, but I decided on the Peugeot 106 as my first car because it was small, economical, and in my case it was in very good condition. And I liked the look of the car and I liked the way it drove. I had £2,500 in my bank, so that was as much as I could spend really. I didn't want to use all of it, I'd like to buy a new stereo or something like that on my new car. What I like most about the Peugeot 106 is that it's small and it's a real pleasure to drive. It's a very nice car. Before the Peugeot, I considered Renault Clios and Vauxhall Corsas. I had a look at both of these, but I didn't find them as appealing as the 106. I'd give the advice to look around, don't just set your heart on the first car you see. Also, just because the car might have a really shiny bodywork, it might not mean that it'll be a dream to run, and it could cost you quite a bit of money. Take somebody who knows a bit more about cars than yourself.
Peugeot 106s, as reliable as we were just talking about the Vauxhall?
Again, if they're well looked after, quite reliable little car.
It's only a 1 litre this.
Yeah.
Likely to struggle a bit on the motorways?
No, they run very well, these Peugeots. They do go quite rapid. They're a very quick car for the engine size. Very quick. Very lively car. Obviously the engine's a lot later than the Nova engine. But for car, I think out of the two it'd probably have the Nova, although it's the older car. But the Peugeot 106, a very popular car. We service quite a lot of them, and no problems.
Build quality, good?
Pretty good, yeah, pretty good. What tends to knock foreign cars being French cars, Italian cars, Japanese cars, is availability of parts. Not readily available as the Vauxhall, and you do tend to pay a bit more for them.
What about if you want to service the car yourself, you want to look after it yourself? Is it an easy one to do? Is it easy to get access to all the simple components for doing that?
Not really, not as easy as the Nova. Few bits and pieces, special tools come into it and that kind of thing, so there's no way you could service the Peugeot 106 as you could a Vauxhall Nova.
So whereabouts in the engine compartment are the difficult areas to go for?
Well, everything now is awkward to get to, and the Peugeot is a fuel injected car as against carburetor on the Nova, so that brings in special tools, special diagnostic equipment and one thing and another, although it is pretty reliable. Things like plugs are easy to get to. Checking oils and filters and batteries and all them, quite easy, no problem there. It's when you get into fuel injection problems and stuff like that.
Well, that's all for this edition of Used Car Heaven. Join us again at the same time next week when we'll look at more great used car bargains.